I have the pleasure today of being joined by Cameron Martin. Cameron is a solutions engineering manager at Chainguard. Cameron, great to see you. Thanks for making time to catch up with me.
Yeah, likewise, Des. Great to be chatting today.
Indeed. So for our audience, just briefly, just to set the scene, we're going to have a great conversation with Cameron around his role, how he came to be at Chainguard, and we'll also look at what a day in the life of Cameron Martin as a solutions engineering manager for Chainguard is like. We'll also look at a 30,000-foot overview of the organization, how they got to where they are now, and some of the things that they offer, their capabilities, solutions, etc. And we'll also sort of look at some of the topics that they're being challenged with and who they're helping, what they're helping customers with. We're going to be talking about their sponsorship of ExecOps and BeerOps in Melbourne and Sydney, which are in October the 22nd and October the 28th, coming up in a few weeks. And we'll have a bit of details around how you can keep on top of what's happening in the latest and greatest news and insights from Chainguard. I wonder, Cameron, just to kick us off, maybe just give us a little bit of background on yourself and your career path and how you came to this amazing role as the solutions engineering manager for Chainguard.
Sure. I've been in tech for, gosh, quite a while now, both on the customer side of things, as well as on the technology, vendor side of things. And so I think I spent, a lot of time abroad, maybe working in the best part of 20 countries in that time. But after the best part of a decade with one of the banks locally, I moved back to join a tech org, a SaaS company, and then through a few different paths, ended up in solution engineering. And Des, I think it's the best role around. I really wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It's a great role, solution engineering. It's one of those ones that I don't think enough people hear about in early stages of their careers.
It is an exciting role, and I think one of the great things about I haven't actually sat in that particular role, but I've certainly been around engineering and sort of sitting within the sales teams. I like the fact that you've got a foot in both camps. You work with clients directly, your customers. You're embedded in their day-to-day life, whether it's a new customer being onboarded or whether it's an existing one that's growing and evolving with you. But you're also then facing inside the business and working with the teams to look at how you can then support those customers. And you get I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw that as sort of being a win-win because you had the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I do, my team as well. It's that part about hearing our customers, their unique problems, their unique challenges that they're facing in their environments, and there can be quite a lot of variety as well as certainly some overlap. But equally, by definition, you're bringing the very latest technology out to market and solving those cutting edge problems that so many customers face. And to me, as you're alluding to, it's that intersection between the two that makes solution engineering so much fun. And to me, that's what makes the role such a great role.
Sounds amazing. I can imagine you jumping out of bed every day just wanting to get to work, which sounds probably weird, but with an amazing company and an amazing role like that, in my past when I worked for amazing firms, I have been just really keen to get into it every day and face some of those fun challenges and the great companies you work with. I'd like to get into kind of what a day in the life of is like in a minute, but I wonder if you could maybe also give us a little bit of a background on the company itself as far as Chainguard goes. And even though people probably know the brand, they may think they know it from a historical point of view, but it's probably evolved and changed dramatically since they might have seen it or worked with it if they're not a current customer.
Sure.
Walk us through sort of the history of the organization and kind of where it came from and where it is now, and then we can sort of dive into kind of what it is today and its latest evolution and the sorts of things that you offer.
Sure. Yeah, so Chainguard's mission is to be the safe source for open source. And our founders have certainly spent a lot of time in their careers thinking about these challenges around the open source software that's running in enterprise environments, thinking about the challenges in the software supply chain. Where has that software come from? What hands has it passed through? Can you trust it? And perhaps there's one way to think about this is, if you were to find a USB stick on the floor of your company's reception, I'd hope that you'd realize that plugging into your corporate laptop, probably isn't a great idea. And hopefully by this stage, most people have been educated on this, and they wouldn't do that. How do you know what's on it? Do you know where it came from, and how do you know that it doesn't contain anything malicious and so on? And interesting enough, our founders, and I'm thinking of one of the stories of our CEO who was involved in a number of open source projects. He's certainly commented upon that burden of responsibility as an open source maintainer, that code is being delivered downstream across multiple very high profile enterprises and the responsibility that comes with that. And that was certainly part of the genesis of Chainguard being formed, that idea of how we can secure the software supply chain.
Yeah, it is. It's astounding, and I'm always surprised on two fronts, and I'd love to get your take on this just briefly, but I'm always surprised by the lack of knowledge that people have with regard to the prevalence of open source and how deeply it has permeated our lives. But I'm also surprised by their lack of knowledge around kind of what it actually is and the value that it brings. And when I think about open source, from my own experience of probably 38 years now in this space, and particularly even before open source, when we called it just free software, this
Right.
idea that, originally we would download the code, we'd compile it, we'd deploy it locally, and then we sort of test it, read the manuals. And these days it's still you just click and go. And a lot of people don't know that their Apple phone is predominantly built on open source in many
Right.
ways, and their Android phones are as well. And then the clouds are all built on open source, and even Microsoft's Azure is built on Linux, their own distribution, and on it
Hmm.
goes and on it goes. And whether it's the Docker container in a Kubernetes environment sitting on a little box at a power pole or a telephone pole near them or their smart meter, it is everywhere. It's in their fridges. It's driving the screens on the latest Samsung smart fridges now, serving them ads in their kitchens. And when you look at it from that point of view and you realize, well, this is everywhere, it has literally permeated every part of our lives. That I think is where I worry that people don't fully understand the potential risk in that. I think on your website, there's a great line that says the status quo in open source has led to this high profile security risk, if you like, or potentially breaches. And this is, I guess, where you guys really step in, and that is you are able to secure that foundation of where open source is across all the infrastructure these days, particularly hyperscalers, and all the environments we run, whether it's on-prem or third-party data centers, whether it's our mobile devices or laptops, and everything in between.
Yeah, that's right. And as you're alluding to there, it's turtles all the way down.
Yep.
The open source is pervading everything that's being delivered. If you think about the lines of code being written in an enterprise, that's very much standing on the shoulders of the open source community. And I
Hmm.
do think that is sometimes not fully appreciated, just the amount of open source code that's out there, and the risk that organizations are running with those software supply chains. And so, if you think about just downloading a container from a public image registry, how is that different from downloading, or
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
putting in a USB stick that you've collected from the reception floor? Except, well, now you're running software in a container that's probably running as root on your laptop. How do you know where it came from? How do you know how many hands it's passed through? And does it contain anything malicious? And yet, I think often that's overlooked in many settings. The implications of that. Certainly, I think in some of the news in recent media events, some very large, high-profile attacks. That's certainly permeating for organizations to really be carefully thinking about where that open source comes from and can they truly trust it.
Yeah, I love that mental visual, sort of the four elephants standing on an infinite tortoise.
Mhm.
That is very much it. And if you're a Discworld fan like me, that's even funnier with Terry Pratchett. One of the things that also comes to mind is we're sort of now in this, and particularly with events like ExecOps and BeerOps, and particularly the DevOps DevSec space, which we'll talk about in a moment with your amazing sponsorships, is
Right.
we're now in sort of this continuous development, continuous improvement, always being rolled out, write the code, compile the code, deploy it, sitting in containers, and then these containers and sort of orchestration platforms like Kubernetes and OpenShift and so forth, where it is the latest code at the latest time. And when you log into something, whether it's your banking or whether it's your airline or some other ticketing system, you're running the latest code and it is deployed and whatever. And I think that again comes back to some of the things that you do with regard to ensuring that that code is particularly if it's open source and being integrated somewhere, whether it's a library or whether it's whatever the case may be, a full package, that you're continuously checking for that. And whether it's rebuilt from source or whatever the case may be, that end-to-end integrity that I think I saw on your website is so critical, because many developers just download the code, copy and paste it, or they just build in a library. They don't know who wrote it, what's in there, haven't even read the documentation. They just Google some example and run it. That must be something you come across a lot as an organization across Chainguard, where you've got these very large organizations that you work with as clients who've got potentially hundreds of developers doing continuous development, continuous improvement, DevOps orchestration models, don't quite know what kind of risk they've got, and might not even mapped out their sort of digital footprint with regard to open source. Is that a regular thing? You have clients come to you saying, look, we've just realized open source is everywhere and we don't really know what's in there. Can you help us?
Yeah, Des, we see that all the time. That spider web of dependencies that organizations haven't necessarily appreciated on first glance that they have in their software supply chain. So, yeah, where has that code come from? Where it has been built? What dependencies does that code have on some other code in that supply chain? And so that's where Chainguard comes into play, in that we're building everything from source. We're providing that, we're building that in our own hardened build environment. And then we're delivering that to our customers where we're building all of that from source, whether that's the topmost component, the Javas, the Nodes, the Pythons, as well as components like the Nginxes and the Postgres. Not just that topmost component, but all the way down the stack. There might be the C library or the encryption libraries that underpin the security of that environment. And we make all of that available to you in a trusted fashion with all the latest functionality, all of the current security fixes. And so you can run that in your environment with confidence from where that has been sourced and built. And certainly one of the challenges that a lot of our customers have previously faced is just the number of vulnerabilities that have accrued in their environment, in that, software is a little bit like milk. It always goes off over time. It attracts those vulnerabilities or CVEs. And so that's something that we help a lot of our customers with, is really bring what's often a very large number of vulnerabilities in an environment. They run their scanner across the environment, bang, it lights up like a Christmas tree. Here's all the long list of things that I need to go and fix. Essentially it's a list of work that
Yeah.
someone needs to go and do to address those issues. And up until Chainguard has come along, there hasn't really been an easy button. It's great. Let's go and peel off some work for this dev team, this dev team, this dev team to go and address those issues, and not just once, on an ongoing basis. Every
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a new release, what else do we need to go and fix across the estate? And so instead of trying to shift left, which is a common phrase, heck, I'm sure just about any attendee at the event will have heard that phrase. We enable organizations to start left, start with that clean, trusted foundation
Yep.
with low to zero vulnerabilities that you can build on with confidence.
And historically, I mean, you'll have to forgive me for this, but I'd love you to fill in the gaps here. But I've sort of, I've known the organization from the likes of sort of securing environments and virtual machines and ensuring there's no vulnerabilities in that, and even down to sort of library level. But you're all the way down to sort of every one of the latest sort of design patterns and deployment models, all the way down to container level and container storage level. So you're doing obviously bare metal where necessary, but these days, whether it's a VM running on-prem or on a development laptop, all the way out
Mhm.
to the largest, the hyperscalers, the libraries, but you're also down to container level now, right? So if something is constantly through this process of being, I guess DevOps, automated builds, whatever orchestration tool you have, you're doing this right down into the heart and guts of the smallest of smallest containers as they're deployed live, knowing that even the most minimal container with the tiniest bit of logic deployed for whatever reason, you've done all the work to ensure that everything goes into that, has zero CVE risk, and it is all pre-built with, I imagine, walk me through kind of that level of granularity, because I think a lot of people, ideally in my mind, they should really understand just how granular you can go. It's not in these big fat VMs, it's all the way down into the libraries, it's down into the containers.
Right. The risk with your open source software supply chain, applies across the board, whether it's a VM, a library, a container, and we provide solutions right across those three product lines. So, Chainguard Container Images was our first product line we brought out to market. We've now got some 1,800 odd containers that are in our catalog, pre-built, ready to go to download and use with all the assurances that I described earlier. And heck, if there's something that's not in our catalog and a customer needs, as long as it's open source, we probably can build it. And that's really part of the magic of what we call the Chainguard software factory,
Right.
that industrial scale assembly line where we can very quickly add new components, run that through the assembly line and get that into the hands of our customers safely. But really taking the same approach more recently for Chainguard VMs. Again, minimal, hardened, secure VMs, low to zero CVEs that can be run whether that's up in the hypervisors or on-prem, but also with libraries, those third-party dependencies that developers bring into the code. Maybe vibe coding away. Ask
Vibe
the coding
coding.
assistant to build some functionality, and let's see what third-party dependency gets dragged in. And funnily enough, whilst the package managers out there have made a really great job of making it really easy to consume software, the PyPis, the Maven Centrals, the NPM registries of the world. At the same time, I think a lot of developers perhaps haven't quite realized that the artifact that they're downloading from those types of environments, there's actually no guarantees that that
Yeah.
artifact being downloaded bears any resemblance to the original source code. And that's where we've seen a number of attacks recently where threat actors have replaced artifacts with something that doesn't match the source code. And that's where, again, Chainguard's approach comes into play. We build everything from source, and we take a whole class of attacks off the table. And so if you're running with Chainguard, where we've seen some, certainly some quite large headlines, then you're protected. Those sorts of vulnerabilities just don't apply to you, or those sorts of attacks just simply don't apply in those environments where you're protected by Chainguard.
I like the mental imagery of sort of this factory approach of I think when I looked at your website, you've got like over 100,000 secure different artifacts being deployed daily, but you also have your own secure Chainguard OS, which I remember reading was sort of your own sort of Linux distro down to sort of nano level updates, almost, one line of code potentially being reviewed and redeployed.
Mm-hmm.
That must be essentially the foundational element of all of this, that you've got your own secure distribution that you've been able to verify and validate so that when people are deploying with its VMs or containerized OSs, that they can go to sleep at night knowing that someone has actually checked effectively every single line of the logic that something's running on.
Mm-hmm.
And and
Right.
and many ways I see this as a case of like almost entirely removing the burden from developers and DevOps operational people from even having to think about that foundational element of the operating system and potentially the file system around the libraries, and then just sticking to their core business, which is what is the code we're having to build. And in some ways, I've seen this before, and I describe it as kind of reducing the time to market, which would then dramatically reduces the time to return on investment. Is that a fair way to describe sort of your whole Chainguard foundation around your own distribution of the operating system completely securely available to deploy without having to think about what's in there because you can trust it?
Yeah, that's right. So we've got our own Linux distribution we call Chainguard OS, built from source, from the ground up, minimal, just containing the components that are required to run a given component. Nothing more. It's perhaps one of those things that we reminded the programmer's creed. We did it not because it's easy, but perhaps we thought it might be easy, and it's actually a pretty hard task to do that at significant scale. That we've done that, and that gives us that full control. We're not reliant on another party to produce a distribution and fix updates, or even multiple updates downstream. And some of the approaches, that idea of a long-term support stream, where distributions may simply choose either to not fix or indicate they might wait till the next long-term support stream runs. Instead, with those nano updates, we always have the latest available. We always have the latest security fix, and that's how we get to low to zero CVs. It can't be done any other way. It's not easy to do, but that's where we've really industrialized that at scale. I might also just touch on one of the other comments that you made there, Des. And that is, I think, from a developer's perspective as well. And I've certainly spent a chunk of time being a developer. I certainly don't know any developer who wakes up of a morning, goes into the office, or I dare say these days, logs on from home. It says, fantastic. I'm really looking forward to clearing a bunch of vulnerabilities in a bunch of tickets
Yep,
today.
100%.
Devs want to be working on building the fun, new, cool functionality. Maybe it's revenue generating, rather than spending a bunch of time, ticking boxes and addressing issues that someone's chasing them for to get back to where the organization needs to be. And to me, that's one of the fun parts about Chainguard too, is it's not just something that's helping organizations secure the applications that they're running in the environment. It's also making devs' lives easier. they can get on with doing what they actually enjoy doing, and go back to being a dev rather than chasing a bunch of compliance or security issues.
Yeah, I think almost every developer I know would say that if they wanted to go into cybersecurity, well, they would have changed their CV and gone that route, but they don't. They want to break code. And for folk who've tuned into this from the BeerOps and ExecOps community, I think this is one of the topics that you really want to prepare and do some homework around. Come and talk to Cameron and the team at Chainguard about the fact you can be completely freed up to focus on what you like if you want to be a DevOps person or anything around that, even if you're doing software engineering, software design, that you don't have to worry about all the stuff. I think for me, if I was in that scenario, I would want my organization adopting what Chainguard can bring to the table so I can literally stick to my core business without having to worry about all of that mess. And I'd love to dive into some of those events that you're sponsoring in the moment, but just briefly, without mentioning their names, I looked at some of the profiles of some of your clients and partners and so forth. And again, I won't give them free advertising, but one of the largest, if not the largest, certainly the largest IPO'd cloud data platforms depends on what you have. One of the fastest upcoming military contract defense device makers is working with you. One of the largest security and software environment organizations that parallel to what you do with this particular focus, they work with you, and a whole range of them. And I was like, I look and think, actually, this again is another reason to have a conversation with you at the events at ExecOps and BeerOps and say, tell us about what you did with them, and you can find the brands on the chainguard.dev website.
Sure.
But have a look at those case studies if you're tuning in, folks, for our audience. Have a look at those case studies. Have a look at what those brands are saying, because if you've got everything from things that fly around and defend countries through to organizations that host and defend and provide some of the biggest business intelligence and data science tools in the world, depending on Chainguard to support them, this in itself is a reason to come and have a conversation. But congratulations on your sponsorship. So you're silver sponsors at ExecOps for both Melbourne and Sydney, and you're also sponsoring BeerOps in Melbourne and Sydney. Firstly, thank you so much for supporting those great events. I know Dr. Stephen Wallace, as I like to call him, as a bit of a joke. There's another long story of that, but I know Stephen and his team do amazing stuff. They run what I think is referred to as Australia's largest tech networking events with both BeerOps and ExecOps. And I want to note that if you're like me and you don't drink alcohol, there's plenty of non-alcoholic options at BeerOps. It's just one of those kind of developer things that, it's like free as in beer. The the sponsorships sort of help these great communities run these great events and build that sort of ecosystem. When you think about the likes of BeerOps and particularly ExecOps, what do these? I mean, you do a lot of conferences yourself professionally. Your organization certainly has your own annual conferences. You do almost every major relevant industry event. What does an event like BeerOps and ExecOps bring to an organization like Chainguard? I imagine there's a focus on a range of things like just access to those people in 3D that you normally only see in 2D on a screen. You're rubbing elbows with real humans and
Right.
birds of feather, but also the diversity element. Looking across what your organization does, you're very well known as an organization for it's not just DEI diversity, but different age groups, different age brackets, roles, responsibilities, capabilities, industries. All of these things must be big attractors for an event like ExecOps and BeerOps for Chainguard.
Yeah, absolutely, Des, and it's great to be supporting the event. I've known this community event and some of the organizers, gosh, for quite some time now, and it's been great to see the growth. I
Yeah.
think that speaks volumes of the sort of value that is providing to the community. And I think it is easy sometimes for us all to be stuck behind screens in the modern world. Nothing beats connecting in person with others, hearing what everyone else is up to. That's that diversity of ideas, diversity of experience, and I'd really encourage everyone when attending something like this to not just connect with the familiar faces who you're working with day in, day out. Take the opportunity to go and connect not just with the sponsors. Of course, we'd love to have a chat with you on the Chainguard booth and share some more about what we've been doing and learning about your environment. But take the opportunity to connect more broadly across the community. Those people you haven't spoken to before. I think that's what really brings together that community, that all the different ideas and experiences, and that's what makes it such a great event.
For attendees who are coming, whether they're registered or not, and if you haven't registered, folks, make sure you do go to beerops.io. That's beer BeerOps and ExecOps, but BeerOps.io, both events are on that website. Make sure you register early. Even if for some reason you register and it says it's sold out, which is rapidly becoming the case, register anyway and get on the waiting list, because if someone drops out, you could be the next in line and get an opportunity. But also it puts you on the mailing list if you opt in, which is where you get all the latest and greatest news around the ecosystem of over 50 odd or 55,000 people across Australia now, and all the latest news and announcements from the sponsors and partners like Chainguard, which in itself is worth the ticket, which of course is free, 100% discount. So register early, and you'll also learn a lot more about the events, what's coming up. But for people who are attending, Cameron, I wonder, I mean, you've done an enormous number of events of these without aging you. You've got a lot of experience in these. For attendees who are registering coming along, whether it's Melbourne and Sydney, what are some of the things that you normally recommend folk who are coming to these types of events, for the networking element, for the opportunity to meet people like yourself and Chainguard the organization, maybe see some demos, have a chat, and maybe even pinch a bit of merch?
Mhm.
What sort of homework should they do leading up to the event so they're well and truly prepared, so that on the day, on the night, they aren't just rocking up and potentially feeling embarrassed about not knowing what to kick off the conversation with?
Sure. I always think it's a great chance. There's simply to do your homework. Take a look at the website, check out who the sponsors are, where you think that might be most relevant to you, and just take the opportunity to do a little bit of homework ahead of time so that you can make the most out of it. Together with of course, reconnecting with people that you might not have seen for a while, and hearing what's latest and greatest around the traps. I think it's always the combination of both that make these kind of events really valuable.
One thing also, someone the other day, one of your peers, but from another brand, not a competitor, mentioned, which I want to just highlight for our audience as well, is that a really great idea someone dropped the other day was that if you have registered and you are definitely coming to Melbourne and Sydney and you want to get some time with Cameron and the team at Chainguard, I recommend you reach out through the website or through a message, maybe through a DM on Twitter or an email on LinkedIn, and actually say, hey, here's my question, here's my topic. I'd love to come and have a 15 odd minute chat with you. Can we book a time? Look at it from that point of view, manage your time, and respect Cameron's time to make sure that he's there and available and prepared for it, but also book your time so you get a chance to get that slot, because there are a lot of people, there are hundreds of people there. It isn't always easy to get some actual bona fide time. But if I know myself, if someone's pinged me and said, hey, can I just get 15 minutes at whatever the time may be, I'm going to be there at the booth, prepared, maybe have some gifts, and be ready and prepared to actually answer the question they've sent me. So I highly recommend doing that. That also is a great way to start the conversation early, so that people kind of know what you're going to ask them when they get there, and maybe give you the best response. I highly recommend people also, for people tuned in, wherever you see this, whether it's on our YouTube channel, whether it's on Videon.com, our video platform, whether it's on social media, wherever you see this, we are going to have all the links that you will want, whether it's to chainguard.dev, the website, to the LinkedIn pages for the organization, to Cameron's LinkedIn page, to the BeerOps.io website. Click on them, bookmark them, follow them, etc., and join that conversation. Give them some likes, chuck some comments in there. And if you cannot for some reason make the event, just follow the brand. I often think it's a little bit cheeky sending a connect invite if they haven't met you straight away, but just hit follow. It's always very respectful of follow. Keep across what Cameron's doing, across what the brand Chainguard's doing, and certainly BeerOps. And then join that conversation. If Cameron's putting out something, a new blog, an article, something, or announcement, ask the questions there in the comments. You'll be surprised how many times they will follow up straight away and potentially even look to schedule a meeting with you and see if they can help you solve some problems that you've got with their open source, with your open source and so forth. I wonder if you could wrap us up then, Cameron, just briefly with what are the best ways for people to sort of keep abreast of what's happening within your background, what you're putting out, and certainly Chainguard, the organization itself, across all the digital social platforms. What's the best way to keep up to date, get the latest news, and just keep across what's happening?
Yeah, sure, Des. You've already mentioned the Chainguard website, chainguard.dev. Our blog's up there, chainguard.dev/unchained. That always has plenty of interesting content around what's latest. One of the things that some of your listeners might want to take a look at is images.chainguard.dev. That's where you'll find our full catalog. And indeed, you can get started today, download some of our free images, take a look, and examine them in your own environment. We've also got some really good education on software supply chain security up at courses.chainguard.dev. Once you've completed those, you'll get some badges, great for adding to the LinkedIn profile. And I think the fun part about some of those courses too is they really highlight one of our company values, which is we do serious work, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And I don't think I've ever taken a a certification course previously, Des, that contains both really great education content, but also a bunch of memes that keep the learning interesting as well. So highly recommend taking the time. I think they're really great educational resources.
I like that. I want a t-shirt, and I'm an XL, by the way, size-wise, of we take our work seriously, but not ourselves too seriously. That's a great catch line.
Sure, we
Yeah,
can organize that, Des.
absolutely, a one-on-one signed. Yeah, great advice. So, chainguard.dev. Funnily enough, one of the things I'm going to recommend people do is have a look at the page footer. There's an enormous number of links from there. There's a great
Mm.
range of stuff around that, particularly the product selection, where it's like Chainguard containers, libraries, VMs, and then, as you said, the images directory for the containers. There's a lot of great resource material around some of the integrations. There's also some really good customer stories that are worthwhile. I know they sound a little salesy, but none of these are salesy in my experience. I've had a good read, a couple of them, some really great examples of where it may be a similar problem or a challenge you're facing that someone else has already had, and then you know that Chainguard can come and help you with it. There's also some really great resources around. There's a trust center, there's a Slack community, there's some courses that are online and available. There's also plenty of material around on-demand stuff with previous events and some webinars that have happened. And there's an entire library of documentation, which I probably spent about an hour over 2 coffees with the other night looking at going, oh, okay, I didn't know that. To the point where now I could probably go toe-to-toe with people with some command line options. Really big opportunity to get some great resource, great material, download it, read it, and also share it with your team. So if you're in any organization, even if you can't physically make it to the ExecOps and DevOps events, which I highly recommend you register and do, but if you're not in one of the areas of Melbourne and Sydney currently, have a look at what Chainguard's doing, share it with your team, and have a conversation over coffee about it, because I think this is something where if you don't want to lose sleep at night worrying about some of the stuff that's happening in the open source, you're integrating, building, and leveraging and deploying. A partner like Chainguard is the one that you want, and you'll certainly get the chance to talk to Cameron and the team at each of the Melbourne and Sydney events at both ExecOps and BeerOps. Cameron, great to see you. Thank you so much for making time to catch up with me. It's been great to learn a bit about you and your background, your current role. I'd love to have you back again sometime soon to do a bit more of a deep dive in the company and probably a bit more of a
Sure.
deep dive of what a day in the life is like, which we'll schedule with your team. But thank you so much for sharing all of that. We look forward to seeing you in both Melbourne and Sydney for both ExecOps and BeerOps. And again, thank you for sponsoring that community. It's a huge win for them and you guys. And we'll look forward to having you back on the show again soon. But in the meantime, safe travels, and we'll see you in Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah, look forward to it, Des. Thanks for taking the time today and really looking forward to the event and chatting again soon.
Indeed. Thanks very much.